Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Today is Wednesday, February the 28th, 2024. I'd like to say happy birthday to my son on this day. Get that out of the way. I hereby call the Property and Planning Subcommittee to order. Madam Secretary, will you please take the roll?
Representative Martin.
Here.
Representative Raper.
Here.
Representative Reedy.
Here.
Representative Rudd.
Here.
Representative Thompson.
Here.
Representative Wright.
Here.
Chairman Crawford.
Present.
Chairman Carr.
Here.
Chairman Carr, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Do we have any personal orders from anyone on the committee before we get started today? Seeing none. Today we have 7 bills on the calendar. But before we begin, let me take a few items here by request of sponsors and without objection. Item number 1, House Bill 2319 has been taken off notice. Item number 4, House Bill 2787 has been rolled 1 week. Item number 5, House Bill 2725 has been rolled 1 week. That brings us to the second one on the calendar, House Bill 1450. House Bill 1450 by Chairman Faison. Chairman Faison, you are recognized. Sir, do you have an amendment on that?
Yes, sir.
Would you like for us to vote on the amendment to get that on the bill? Does that make the bill?
If that pleases the chair.
What is your drafting code, please, sir?
11122.
Got a motion, a second on the amendment. Any questions? If none, all those in favor of the amendment going on to the bill, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? The amendment is on the bill as amended, and I believe the amendment makes the bill, so you are recognized on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, committee. Very good to be with you. Mr. Chair, I know we have some people who want to testify on this bill, and before I kind of got into it, with your indulgence, maybe go in recess and go ahead and
that is a great suggestion. We will go out of session. And I have down that in first, we have Mr. Will Denami of the Assessors of Property. He would like to speak in opposition of that bill. You have about 3 minutes, Mr. Denami.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Thank you, Representative Faison. My name is Will Denami, and I'm here today on behalf of the Assessors of Property, and they oppose this bill as amended. What the amendment does is it changes the valuation for specific types of property. So it allows for a special valuation, which would, is intended to result in a lower tax amount. So this bill, it identifies a group of property owners and it gives them a special tax treatment. And assessors of property have historically opposed that. They want all property to be valued at its sound, intrinsic, immediate economic value. And Mr. Chairman, this moves away from that. This has been, it also references, notwithstanding any other court case, there was a Spring Hill decision that spoke specifically to how the valuation should be done. And this would override that.
Thank you, Mr.
Chairman.
Denami.
That's taking questions.
Any questions to the speaker? Any questions? Chairman Wright, you're recognized.
Thank you then, Mr. Chairman. So speaking to how property should be evaluated, how should property be evaluated?
In the case, in these particular types of property, they're referred to as LIHTC or low income housing tax credits. And so those credits are calculated in the value of the property. And they're part of that value calculation for a variety of reasons. But one of the reasons is if you were to sell the property in year 5, then there's 5 years of credits that will go with the property. So they're part of the real estate package. So the credits are typically used on the front end to help pay for the construction of the project. In exchange for, over time, they come in if the conditions are met, which are rents are restricted at a certain level in exchange for those credits.
Chairman Wright, your follow-up question?
So if I were a property assessor, which I do not want to be, and I approach this piece of property in front of me, there are issues other than the value of this piece of real estate that I'm looking at?
No, sir. It's just determining what is the value of the real estate.
And that's what I think that's what my question was. What's the value of that piece of real estate? And the property assessor has to do more than just say what the value of that piece of real estate is?
No, sir. They just determine the value and they look at the full picture of the property in order to determine the value. And because these properties, unlike other apartment complexes, they have an additional credit structure that comes with them that is part of the value because it's part of the real estate package.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Anyone, any questions others to the speaker? Chairman Reedy, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Denami, I've got a document here in front of me, and I'm going to read and then tell me if you believe this is accurate or not. Tennessee's current approach lags behind the evolving national trend. Kentucky, by way of legislature, Georgia by legislature and Supreme Court, and Alabama by the courts in particular have moved to exclude low-income housing tax credit from evaluations in recent years. Is that correct?
That very well may be true, Representative. Every state is going to be different in how they administer property taxes because it's based on state constitutional law. So Tennessee is going to be unique to all other states. But this matter has been tested in Tennessee with the Spring Hill decision, which was a Court of Appeals decision specifically. And the assessors of property are following the Spring Hill decision. They calculate the credits in the value because it is part of the real estate package. There's also two other provisions. One provision, which is the State Board of Equalization, allows for the taxpayer to request a levelized payment scheme. So they pay for the value of those credits equally over time. And a few years ago, we worked on a compromise, which allows for local government to enter into a payment in lieu of tax agreement with the taxpayer if they want to. So in recognizing that other states do it differently, and recognizing that also these particular developments can be, you could be targeted, they could be developed, they could be, put in areas that are desirable for growth. The local governments have the ability now to enter into a pilot program to try to incentivize these types of developments. But under this bill, there would be no need for a pilot going forward. This would simply create a special valuation model, which would result in lowering their taxes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Chairman, thank you. Anyone else to this speaker? All right. Thank you, Mr. Denami. I think we have one more speaker. Don't have, okay. We'll go back in session. We are back on the bill. Chairman Faison, you are recognized.
Thank you, committee. So good to be with you all again. Real quick point of clarification. The court actually ruled that since there is no legislation in Tennessee, that assessors may tax the tax credits. So I'm going to get historical with you if you can, if you just allow me just a minute. Everybody on this committee, I'm probably older than some of you are older than me, remember what the projects were. Remember that when we were young? And I remember driving by the projects, and I was raised in a single wide trailer and pretty bad. And it was times that I thought maybe the projects looked better than what I lived in. But regardless, the projects weren't something that you were proud of. You didn't want to be raised and living in the projects. Ronald Reagan decided the best way to fix low-income housing was to come up with an incentive that would give it over to the private sector. He decided this notion of giving tax credits to the private sector. So he knew that the private sector would, if they built low-income housing, it would look better than the projects that we saw when we drove around that side of town when we were younger, and that they would actually put them on the other side of the tracks. And it would be something that attracted people from firefighters to school teachers, just to blue-collar workers, all myriad and sundry of things like that. It really worked, and we end up having some decent places for people who were struggling, who needed that help. When he did that, basically, Congress, when they acted on the low-income housing tax credits, they came in and said, we will give the developer so many tax credits so they'll have the money to build this place, and then you are only going to be able to charge your rent, your monthly rent is going to be based on basically 60% of what the annual median income is of that area. Now, all of y'all, except for Shelby County that I see here, know how important housing needs are right now. Places for people to live. It is majorly important. I don't know if you've been watching, but in the last several years, it is incredibly difficult to get a development in rural Tennessee. I dare say that you haven't had too many low-income housing developments built in your district. Interesting thing about Shelby County here, Shelby County is doing a pilot project because they know they can't get anything built if they keep taxing the tax credits. So they came out from underneath the state and did a pilot project to make this possible. Places like where I live and some of y'all live, we desperately need a place for school teachers, firefighters, policemen, people like that, blue collar workers, to have a nice place to live, but they're not being built. And I'll give you an example. According to the statistic we have, the annual median income for Davidson County is $80,000 a year. That means they can tax to build a low-income housing development. They can build a place and then basically rent to somebody based on 60% of $80,000 a year. You go where I live, or where some of y'all live, maybe be lower, the median income is just under $60,000 a year. And they're only able to charge rent based on 60% of that. And by the way, Davidson County has a pilot project. They separated themselves from the state, did a pilot project here. That's why you're continuing to see low-income housing tax credits come right here to Davidson County and Shelby County. I'm saying those of us in rural Tennessee, we need a chance. I want you to ask yourself, I don't know how many of y'all serve on finance or how long some of you have been here, but there is no other tax incentive that we give to corporations, to businesses, to anybody to come here and then turn around and tax that tax credit. I'm saying, let's allow the people who are wanting to build in rural Tennessee to help impact some of us. So we have some places to sleep for people who are blue collar workers and are just doing their best to make it by. Let's give them a chance and quit taxing the tax credit.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Do I have questions to the sponsor? Representative Martin, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chairman Faison. I have just one clarification. If Builder Jones builds a building here and he's renting that at whatever he wants to rent it for, and he didn't get any tax credits, he can set his rent at whatever he wants to, that building is assessed at a certain value. And someone who's taken the tax credits is trying to help the working class people with this. Their building, as it currently stands right now, they're being taxed. If they were the identical buildings, they would be paying identical taxes. Is that a true statement?
You're recognized.
Almost true, but I can take you to counties that exact thing you just said, the property assessor's taxing more to the low-income housing developer than he is to the people who are not in low-income housing. I can show you those places that they're actually getting taxed at a higher rate per square foot.
Representative Martin.
So why would they do that?
Because there's
It seems unfair.
You're recognized.
Because there's no legislation. Like I said, if you went back and looked at the court ruling that the testifier before us brought up, they actually tried to put that out there. There's no law in Tennessee. By the way, saying that, there's 46 states who fix this. They realize that development for people who need some help is important. And 46 states in America have said, we're done taxing the incentive.
Representative Martin, follow. Anyone else to the sponsor? I'll take a personal privilege here. I voted against you on this bill all along. And I just want it to be known that I have seen both sides. And I pull no punches with anybody. I've seen developers. I've got developers calling me. I have been with your developer before and on this. And I know everybody's looking at me to guide this along, but and I'm not making any suggestions to anyone. Don't think that I am. But I just want the public to know that I have seen both sides. And I'm probably going to be on your side this time because of this. And I just want to make that public and let everybody know it's just my opinion for that. And I have seen these other states that are not doing this. I did go to the ruling that you're talking about, and they did rule that way because Tennessee had no law. So that has helped me sway my opinion on this. And I just wanted to say that for what it's worth. No contention to anybody else. You vote your conscience on this, but I just had to make that known publicly because I know my people back home are looking at me. But sometimes as my opinion is, I have to step up and try to help my fellow man. And I know where some of these places have been put. So that is all I have to say. And I appreciate the time and the indulgence of the committee for me to make that statement. Any other thing to come before the, us on this particular, bill number here, bill number H, HB 1450? Are we ready to vote? All those in favor, say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. Bill goes full committee. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That brings us down to item number 3, House Bill 2879 by Chairman Todd. Chairman Todd, you are recognized.
Thank you so much, sir. I have House Bill 2879. The purpose of this bill is to
Do
defend.
I hear a motion? Motion, properly second. Okay. Do you have an amendment on that, sir?
Let's see. I don't believe so, sir.
That's exactly right. Sir, you're recognized on the bill as
Thank
presented.
you. The purpose of the bill is to defend agricultural land in Tennessee from being purchased by U.S. adversaries such as China, North Korea, Iran, and Russia. It also coincides with the Lee administration's goal of protecting Tennessee farms and farmers. It promotes agricultural land from the definition, it removes the term agricultural land from the definition of real property and redefines it as land that is classified as farm property under the current tax code. So this is getting some parity in our code. It also bars business entities or other individuals from the designated countries of China, North Korea, Iran, and Russia from entering into business agreements relating to agricultural land and critical infrastructure. It excludes services relating to product warranties and support. It authorizes the governor and the commissioner of safety to add a country to the designated list if it's assessed that a country is a threat to ag lands or critical infrastructure. And with that, I'll be glad to take any questions. I will say one more thing. This is an ALEC model policy. Many of you know I'm the state chair in the House for the ALEC organization, and this has been vetted through the committees and task forces through ALEC. It's where I first became aware of it this past year and wanted to make sure that we had this in place in Tennessee. I have this question brought to me, as many of you do all the time, about how are we protecting our agricultural land from our foreign adversaries. So with that, appreciate your consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Do we have any questions? Representative Thompson, you are recognized.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Do you have statistics on purchases? Now, let's start from the beginning. First of all, I'm as anti-totalitarian as anyone, probably more than many now. And, due to federal sanctions, I believe that Iran, North Korea, and Russia are not really entities here. This is geared towards China. And do you have any statistics on how much Chinese entities are buying from foreign entities are buying agricultural land in Tennessee now?
You recognize, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. I don't have any statistics on the state of Tennessee. One anecdote I can pass along that Texas is dealing with the same thing right now. They literally discovered that a Chinese national who has direct ties with the Chinese Communist Party bought, I think it was 140,000 acres of property in Texas next to Andrews Air Force Base, if I remember correctly. It was an Air Force Base. I think that's the right one. And made application for wind turbines. And it really raised an eyebrow because it's not a windy area. Wind turbines take a certain amount of sustained wind, and this would not have qualified. And so they're going after that individual now to force them to divest of that property. May have already happened. This has been in the works for several months at least. So we know there are attempts, and there are other places around the country I've heard of as well. That's one that's most prominent because of the proximity to the Air Force Base. But there are certainly concerns about critical infrastructure like that, as well as our agricultural land. And we need to protect our food supply. We don't want to be dependent on foreign countries for our food supply for our citizens. And so this is just a measure to make sure that that doesn't become the case.
Representative Thompson, you recognize.
Thank you. I mean, I'm just I really think this bill needs more study, really, because, I mean, I know what your intentions are, and I know, of course, Alec has a very strong ideological bent, and I believe they were influenced strongly by some of the leadership in Taiwan, and I certainly want to protect Taiwan. But I think we need to be cautious when we're trying to look at trying to, as a state, affect our foreign policy, which is not our role, and also that how we look at business, especially when we're dealing with the second largest economy in the world, and I know that there's potential for China to abuse this, and we need to be cautious. But I do think that this should have more study before we go forward.
Thank you. Chairman Reedy, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Todd, looking at the bill, foreign adversary, do you have the federal code where we pulled that down from? I'm looking and it's, maybe I can cut to the chase.
I don't see that in any of my notes right here. And this one, that's why we named these specific countries, because there is a already provision in law that refers to sanctioned countries, but that can change over time. And so we, for the foreseeable future, we know these specifically are adversaries. And when it comes to owning property in our state, I would challenge any of you to try to go buy a piece of property in any of these countries. You will not be allowed to. You are banned, prohibited from owning property in these countries as a U.S. citizen. So we're simply making sure that we're protected in the same way.
Mr. Chairman.
You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And if I can give commentary, and it was this morning, as you know, I've got a bill coming forward, and a lot of work's been done on it, but it was the Agriculture Foreign Investment Data Act, or Disclosure Act, I'm sorry, get this right, 1978. And for the committee, the viewers, the folks in this room, with that, a foreign entity that buys any property in the United States in 90 days is supposed to report to USDA at the federal level on who they are, what they own, and everything else. And if their status ever changed, they become an American, that 30 days to reply back to that. Or if they're taking agricultural land out of production, they must reply to USDA. However, the state of Tennessee does not track that information, nor is it at the federal level. I hesitate that there's a lot of bad actors that are not sending that up. But there is an agricultural law center that I was reading this morning, and they made mention of foreign adversary. So there's many states that are, like what was already talked about, that are going this direction, trying to protect the sovereignty of these United States. And it's a huge process. Now with that, there is the USDA document that I'd be happy to share with anybody. I actually printed it off. It's over 230 pages. But it was interesting in that document that in Stewart County, which I represent now, right next to Fort Campbell, there's 34,000 acres that are owned by others. And I'm trying to find out who the others are. In redistricting, I lost Fort Campbell and Montgomery County, what I had in what used to be House District 74, and it's almost 5,000 acres listed under others. And of course, I had a few weeks ago, General Ross, the Department of Military, our general, in my office. I said, in the name of Department of Defense, we need to find out who these others are. And so it is an issue. We've got bad actors in our state, in our country, and we do need to be concerned. And so with that, it's with your area going with foreign adversaries, where my piece of legislation that's coming up soon is in a different area. And it looks like it's probably a good idea that we're covering all angles on this. But I appreciate the legislation. I think it is necessary for the state of Tennessee, but also it's something that the previous rep
talking about this. It's more information. We're going to continue talking about this and adding to this law to protect the sovereignty of the state of Tennessee. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And the chair will take a privilege here. I believe with what Chairman Reedy said, I don't believe that this legislation will have any conflict with his legislation. Is that correct, Mr. Chairman?
That is my understanding, sir.
Thank you, sir. Chairman Rudd, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chairman. First, I want to say a big thank you to both you and Representative Reedy on your hard work over the years on this and securing it. This is a huge problem in other states. It's probably becoming a problem here. We want to head it off. We have foreign countries like China that hate this country. They're trying to undermine our dollar, trying to destroy our economy. That they're actively trying to destroy agriculture now too by getting third world countries to supply them instead of us. And then what land they do get from us, they're trying to buy arable land to control that land. And I don't care if it's a friendly government or a foreign government. No foreign government should control strategically important land in this country. But I want to thank you for bringing it. And as far as my other questions, Representative Reedy already answered that, and so did Chairman Carr about whether there's a conflict, and I appreciate that. But biggest side is this is an urgent that we need to do this because they are hostile. They're even flying spy balloons over us and everything else. So we need to protect our lands from those who want to destroy us. Now, I did have one question, if I could, Mr. Chairman.
You're recognized on the question.
All right. How does your bill affect, which I don't want to shut where a foreign country's bought a company here and they're operating legally. I don't want to affect them operating. If a foreign country bought an American company and that company owns land and they have to divest of it, can they lease it back? Can foreign companies, would it restrict them leasing land, or how does it affect leasing?
You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for that question. And all we're dealing with are the named countries here. So these are what we consider our adversaries. There are certainly many foreign companies and foreign countries that do business here, that own property here. For example, in my neck of the woods and around Madison County, Toyota owns quite a bit of property. They have several factories. They're an extremely welcome partner in our neighborhood. And so they're folks that we want there. So we have crafted this so that it does not affect the good actors at all. But if one of these named countries, or one that gets added later by the governor or the commissioner of agriculture, purchases, like you said, a company that already owns property, then they would have to divest of that. There would be no lease opportunity. It's my understanding of the way this is crafted. So they wouldn't have control. That's our main issue here. We don't want them having control of that property and taking it out of agricultural production, or possibly doing something else with critical infrastructure that would be a disadvantage to us.
You recognize,
So I would say that to take away any argument anyone would have, if a hostile country is on the list and they have to divest themselves of a company that's a profitable company here, they can simply sell that company and keep the company in operation. It wouldn't put them out of business. They were in business when they bought them. So
I would say that's accurate. Yes.
all right. Thank you.
Thank you. Chairman Crawford, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a couple of different questions, but mainly to get stuff on the record. Your bill, can you tell me in a brief statement the difference in what your bill is doing versus what Chairman Reedy's bill is doing?
You recognize.
I'm not as intimately familiar with Chairman Reedy's. We have discussed it. I know our assistants have been looking at the differences because we wanted to make sure they were both necessary. And there are enough significant differences that, and I don't have a list of those because I don't have his bill in front of me, but we are confident they are both needed and are necessary to provide the protection that we need for our ag lands and our critical infrastructure.
Thank you.
Chairman, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The other question I would have is, looking at your bill, you have 4 basic countries that are listed: China, Iran, North Korea, and Russia. I know one of the differences is in this bill and Chairman Reedy's bill is that the countries that are excluded in Chairman Reedy's bill are the ones that are on the terrorist watch list, that have members of that. So that kind of rotates. If there's somebody goes on that list, then they're excluded. If somebody becomes an ally of America and the differences aren't what they are at this time, they can come off of it. But in your bill, if we have to add, let's say Venezuela, would we have to bring that back to the state legislature to be voted on to add that particular country
You
each
recognize.
time?
Thank you for that question. And in 66-2404, designation of a country as a threat, it describes a process to add a country. And so that process laid out with the governor and consultation with the Commissioner of Agriculture. And so there's a process already that would not have to come back to the legislature.
Thank you.
Chairman Crawford.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The other I have is, I think Tim covered a lot of it in his question, but if a country wants to buy particular land and it is agricultural land and it is in an area to where maybe it isn't conducive to what they're wanting to bring over as a company or an investment, and they are excluded from being able to do that because of Chairman Reedy's bill and your bill, then is there anything in this bill that would address them using a undersigner to sign and take that property from agriculture?
Chairman.
Thank you. In 66-2403, B mentions that a business entity may not enter into an agreement relating to critical infrastructure or agricultural land in this state with a company, and then it describes these companies. So I believe that's covered, sir.
Thank you. Chairman Crawford.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, sponsor, for bringing this bill. I wanted to get those things on record so everybody would be a little bit more familiar with what's being done here. But I think Chairman Reedy started this a few years ago, and with your work, I think this is the right direction for Tennessee, and I appreciate you all looking out for Tennesseans. And we're slowly but surely losing a lot of agricultural lands, and hopefully this will do something to help us protect that. Thank you.
Thank you. Chairman Reedy for a follow-up question.
It actually add to the commentary of the current federal law, critical infrastructure, it is currently against federal regulations, any of that property around, let's say, Fort Campbell, any of our military bases. So that's already in law. So we don't need to enact that. But certainly when we're talking foreign adversary and that list that he is referencing here, the legislation that I'm bringing forward is 22 CFR 126.1, and it is very specific to international traffic in arms regulations. And so that's the different federal code that we'll be proceeding with here in the next few weeks. So with that, it's after further study and discussion, you're showing Chairman Todd that this is necessary for Tennessee, and I want to thank you.
Thank you. Representative Martin, you recognize.
Thank you, Chairman Todd. I've got a question on the part of the bill that is 66-2-403A, where the language says that a business entity or individual may enter an agreement relating to agricultural in this state with the individual who are citizens, and then it names these countries. Here's my question. If I'm a citizen of Russia, but I don't want to be, and I want to come to America and experience the freedom that you and I have, is there a provision, or is it that difficult for someone to get out of that citizenship or have dual citizenship? Are they precluded?
Chairman Todd.
Excellent question, sir. And certainly I believe my intention is that if they become a U.S. citizen, denounce their citizenship from Russia in your situation that you just mentioned, then they would qualify to purchase that property.
Representative Martin.
I guess my question is, and I'm just not knowledgeable of this, is If I come to America from one of these countries and I say, I hate my homeland, I don't want to be a citizen there, surely it's more than that to get out of being a citizen of whatever that country would be. And I'm just wondering what is the process of that to denounce citizenship in one of these countries?
Chairman?
Thank you. I honestly have no idea. I don't know what that process is either, and that's why we've crafted it this way, so that whatever that process is, they would have to go through that and become a U.S. citizen, and then they could certainly, or a citizen of another country that's not on this list, and they certainly could purchase.
I appreciate what you're trying to do, and thank you so much for what you're doing.
Thank you. Chairman Crawford for follow-up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have some basic knowledge of the question that Representative Martin was bringing in, as far as I don't know about the denunciation of their countries, but I do know I have an aunt that is from Denmark, and she wanted dual citizenship. And there is a heavily regulated process, a lot of time to become a U.S. citizen, a lot of requirements that they have to do. Now on the saying that they're not a part of Russia or wherever, I don't know that part, but it's pretty strenuous to be able to become a U.S. citizen if you're from another country.
Thank you, Chairman. Any further questions to the sponsor of the bill? And to the sponsor of the bill, I will, as the chair will say, I'm sorry. I know we've had a lot of comments here that weren't back and forth direct questions, as we tend to keep them as back and forth questions. But I think that all these needed to be said today, because we're local government. We're trying to control our local farmlands and everything like that. And it was good to get all this on the record. So I apologize for any long stage you had in the well today. But I see no other questions. Are we ready to vote on sending this to full committee? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. Bill move. We have one no on that. If you want to be recorded, see the clerk. And Chairman Todd, your bill moves on to full committee.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, moves us on down now to item number 6, House Bill 2553 by Chairman Reedy. Chairman Reedy, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee. On this bill, I do need to roll it a week and to explain it. After last session, it was a lot of members came to me, not that I become the professional in the room by any means, but it was the Arkansas legislature and what the governor had done in that state. And it comes to my knowledge that the Arkansas bill was borrowed from Iowa. And so there's about 6 states that have done this particular bill already. But the challenges we have going from state to state, our laws differ in application. So in working with our legal department, we're making sure that hopefully we can get it as close to right as we can the first time without coming back with a bunch of amendments. Now, already I stated we're looking at that international traffic and arms regulation side of it. We're also looking at putting the responsibility under the Department of Agriculture, which Chairman Todd has already, designates in his bill, which is a big plus. Already spoke to the Commissioner of Ag. He's good with the bill, and it was interesting when I had him on a conference call that he had just visited with the Secretary of Agriculture in Arkansas, and their law as it stands holds up in a court of law. So there's no pushback on that. So we are getting it right, but also collaboration with the representative that passed that bill last year in that state. We've had her on the conference call, and I think we're posed to be at a good place for the state of Tennessee. But with all of that being said, Mr. Chairman, I need to roll this 1 week, please.
Without objection, roll 1 week. That brings us down to the last item on the agenda today, House Bill 1941 by Chairman Reedy. Chairman Reedy, you're recognized. Motion properly second. You are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And this is another bill that we're looking out for our veterans. And it came to a point of the rise of property taxes and trying to help those that are 100 disabled in paying their property taxes with the state level, because the Department of Treasury helps out, and not all counties, but some counties help with that, with their citizens in those counties. And Senator Lundberg brought me the bill. It is a good bill, But the challenge that we have, if you see the fiscal note, it exceeds $13 million. And here we are in a financial quagmire this year. And, the thought is, well, we could move it through showing support for our military, for our veterans, and then getting it to finance where we know that it will be the dying place. So with the fiscal note and working with Senator Lundberg, we will continue our efforts in the future and hopefully have more of a fiscal sound budget going forward. So at this time, Mr. Chairman, I just need to take this bill off notice.
Without objection, House Bill 1941 off notice. That, before we close today, do any members have any announcements or personal orders? The chair will take a privilege. I want to say thank you to this committee today. We have had back and forth conversation, back and forth questions, and it just shows what we're supposed to do on the committee. And I am very, very pleased with this committee today and the way that we handle things today. With seeing nothing further, I'm up for a motion to adjourn. We have a motion. So move. We are adjourned.